right, very good. Again, good evening. First, I'd like to say before we get to show you this exciting rendition of what we feel the future of Susquehannock High School can look like, I do want to say that this was a collaborative process. We had a dedicated group of about 12 to 15 students, almost all of who have graduated, given the time when we started the design, who had input into what they felt from a student perspective was the greatest needs. We've had a number of faculty and department member and department chairs take a look at each of the individual classrooms for their particular departments and give input on what they feel is in the best interest to be able to deliver quality instruction to our students. We have had a group of parents who were on the Susquehannock High School Principals Advisory Board who did get input on this throughout the process, as well as the other administrators, Dr. Bell and Mr. Sterner. We've had great collaboration with our architects, as well as buildings and grounds. And we've even brought in a company or two from the community just to take a look at a couple things that we're looking to renovate here coming in the future. So this is certainly not just coming from one group, but this is really coming from all aspects because we recognize that this building that we're proposing really is going to jettison us into not necessarily the next 10 years, but maybe the next 50 to 70 years. So with that said, I think going back to our past and always taking a look at the future, I think really is and continues to be our focus. Probably no truer words were spoken or written by an educator than those listed as shown here by our first principal, Mr. Ralph Bortner. The times have changed. Things are very different, but yet they're still the same. Things continue to change, things continue to improve, even despite a pandemic, new technology, new advances. Just even this evening, what we're doing tonight just shows you the improvements or our abilities to overcome things. And really, it is and does rest on the shoulders of those students who are currently in our high school and those who entered kindergarten this year. The future is theirs, and what we can do with them and prepare them for, they're only going to shape what happens in the future. And I would agree, and I think all our administration and our school board members and our community members would be, we can't fail our kids. Our objective is always to do what's in the best interest of our students. And I think Mr. Schefter did a nice job with that. And I would, as an administrator, say, yes, our school board always takes what's in the best interest of our students first and foremost in their decision making. And we appreciate that as an administration and as a faculty. So one of the things that our district has done and continues to do is that despite whatever changes come of the building and the physical structure, the one thing that will not change is our continued desire to have excellence in the classroom and academically. What you're seeing here really is just a compilation of all the work that our teachers from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade have done with our students. These are scores and rankings from U.S. World News Report for where Susquehannock rates. Obviously, we are not number one in all those rankings, and that is ultimately would be our goal, to ensure that our students absolutely get the absolute best and be first and foremost. But we do very well. Our students are extremely competitive, especially not only academically, but the career readiness piece, being number 63 of almost 500 high schools in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, really is a big one for us. And then also the number of students that we, and when I say we, I truly mean our teachers, our counselors, and even our parents. We try to open as many doors to those competitive classes for advanced placement as possible, with the idea of being able to support students through. So this will continue to be our number one focus is academics, but one area that we continue to work on is our career readiness, recognizing that not every student's going to go to a four-year school. There's nothing wrong with a two-year technical school to earn a trade where you can make a great living and follow your passions, as well as those students who want to go in the military and go right into the workforce. So when we brought our students together, basically almost 2 years ago, and we sat down with them in a focus group and we said, what is it that you really like to see in a school? These main design points are really what came to light, and we'll go into kind of more detail with each one of them. And the students that are in your groups, I would, implore you to ask them questions and see what they think. But our students came back and said, and our teachers said that classrooms need to be flexible and adaptable, and they need to be able to not only meet our current needs, but also look to the future to meet our needs. They need to be student-centered, so they need to be designed for both academic excellence as well as social emotional needs of our students. And really where it came in social emotional, one of the greatest things that our students said was more natural lighting in our classrooms. And we'll show you a picture of a classroom that I'm familiar with as far as natural lighting. That really popped out to our students right away in the focus group. They also said that classrooms provide adequate spacing and furnishing so that they can use a variety of student groupings and seating arrangements. And our teachers echoed this as well, being able to group our students and have them work collaboratively, be able to move furniture around as needed based on the projects that they're working on. Also, the idea of having independent learning spaces, and Mr. Poole is going to talk a little bit later about what we're doing with music rooms as well as small group lab rooms, and then having some open student work areas as well in the building. The idea that they enjoy cross-collaborative and cross-curricular learning activities, and the idea that the building should continue to promote that. And that is something that prior to COVID and even now with COVID we're working on, but we certainly kind of took a pause in some of the areas, but it's an area that we continue to stress because we feel students, when they can apply cross-curricular learning, it sticks with them longer and definitely allows them to excel at different levels. And we also felt that we needed to be able to provide a work environment. This is more of our technical areas where we have design and prototyping areas for construction and finishing. So these were really the 6 things that our students came up with. One of the things that we came up with as well is the idea that we really need a heart to our building. And the heart of our building really should be, and really of any educational setting, should really be the library. And it should also be a space where students can come together and they can collaborate, whether it's working in small groups, whether we're bringing multiple classes together in a larger space where they can work together, where they could come and actually display the works that they're doing so that everyone in the building has the ability to see and maybe be inspired by what they're doing. So what we came up with was to design a section of the building, which we're calling the Commons, but it's really the heart of what our Warrior family is going to be. And what you see here on the right is really what our Commons areas would be. This is our library. So we have one large entrance into the library that would open into a Commons room space where we would have flexible seating for our students. This would be kind of the area where groups could perform if they wanted to before school or after school, or music groups will do that. This could also be an area that could be for small ensemble groups that rather than perform in a large auditorium, they sometimes will do ensemble groups. They could come in. This is a little more intimate space where we would have the ability for them to perform and really kind of act as our town square throughout the day. And again, here we would have a set seating space. We have our library, and then that would enter right into the wall where my cursor is now would be our office suite, and this would be the counseling office. So this would really kind of be the heart and soul. The auditorium would be to this end of the building, and towards the foreground would be the cafeteria and the gym. So this is really the heart of our heart of our school. Currently, the heart of our school is really the library is a very nice space, but it is tucked away. It was the heart of the school when the building was built in 1950. It has since, through additions, been kind of relegated off as a side hallway. And while a lot of our students use it for both our tech shed, for our writing center, and just to come in and work collaboratively or to find a book or do research, read, play chess, work on a puzzle, just as some downtime, which Mrs. Corriere does a fantastic job in promoting. Really, where the nitty gritty of things happen is in our gym lobby and our auditorium lobby. And the picture here on the left where my cursor is, that's our current auditorium lobby. And what you see is a group of students that are working collaboratively, which we promote. We certainly want that. So students are there, they're working on schoolwork. What you do not see in that photo, though, is over by the main entrance, which would be to the right of that photo. There's a group of about 3 students who are part of a string ensemble. They're practicing their music. And at the same time, we have about 6 or 7 young students from the growing tree that are in the open space of the lobby. They're actually doing their outdoor work due to weather. So that's not necessarily conducive to what we're looking for. Could provide. And so he's using the lobby, which is a great way to use space and be able to do the instruction that he wants to get what the students need from the activity. But what you don't see is about 6 or 7 students that are also in the lobby doing the same thing the girls on the left are doing, which is trying to do their work and work collaboratively on projects. So again, that heart of our building, that common space, would be able to provide us that larger space for students to come to work and do things and give us the space to give students the environment, the right environment that they need for that. This is the outlay of our first floor that we are proposing. Currently, you can see this is the auditorium, and the auditorium is remaining. That is going to stay intact. And to the right here, you have the gymnasium where my cursor is. That is also staying and remaining intact. The commons area would be this area that I'm circling here with our library, a new cafeteria, which would be larger, being able to host dances that our student council loves to do, especially homecoming. Rather than using the gym, we would actually have space to use based on the size of the cafeteria to do that. You would empty out from the gym or the cafeteria into the commons area, have access to the library, stairs to the second floor, or be able to move right into the counseling office to get the services they provide, as well as our nurses space right off of the commons for students to be able to come in who may need to see the nurse or use the nurse. So this is our first floor. We have a brand new section for the music classrooms, which we'll talk a little bit about more in detail. A new FACS classroom, which is going to be more of a culinary slant to it rather than a traditional FACS classroom. Our childcare space with a dedicated outside space and not just a courtyard that we have now, but a dedicated play space for the students to be outside. We also added additional storage space for our musical and theater arts, which is nice, and then a new kitchen area. And then the office space is being renovated. So currently, this is the outside of the current building. So everything to the above where my cursor line is would be all new build. And then there would also be additional pieces added on, or not added on, but renovated in the remainder of the building, which we'll talk about here in a little bit in a little more detail. One of the areas that I alluded to when I was showing you the map was our family and consumer science area. If you are a graduate of Susquehannock High School, you'll recognize the picture, or at least at the very minimum, the layout in the lower left-hand corner. While the appliances have changed and the cabinets have changed, the layout that we have currently in our FACS and family consumer science room is the exact same layout that was in 1950. And in 1950, family and consumer science was more geared towards just that, family and consumer science. Where we would like to take this particular part of that program is we would like to move it more to what you see on the right, which is more of a culinary design, with the idea of being able to prepare students who wish to go into the culinary field, as well as those students who just would like to take family and consumer science and learn the cooking aspect. We also feel it's important, as we begin to get students ready for careers, that they get to look at what the culinary world looks like We have a lot of students who currently work in restaurants. One of the things that we would like to do as we move to this culinary piece, and even prior to, is what certifications could we provide for students that will make them make their resume pop a little bit more for employers, as well as begin to move them on their culinary track. So the pictures that you see to the right, we would like to have more mobile stations, have the actual appliances along the wall, and then students would be able to move the tables that you see and chairs. They would be on wheels, so they'd be able to move them as per projects that they would need. Much more like a culinary institute, and much more like a modern kitchen facility. The Valencia wasn't one that in New York City, where we had prom 2 years ago, we actually got a chance to pop in and see what they were designing in their kitchen. And this really, what you're seeing concept-wise to the right is similar to what Yorkville Tech would have in their culinary, and as well as the Valencia would have, which is one of our local businesses that does from time to time employ some of our students. Another area that we definitely would like to enhance is our applied arts programming. One of the areas that we are definitely taking a look at is our current power tech and metal shop class, as well as our architectural and engineering classes. We'd like to create a design that simulates more of what an actual manufacturing facility looks like. Currently to the right, you can see that there is this is a view from the door for our power tech classroom. Again, it's a large space. Definitely have a lot of machinery in there for our students to work on and to create things. But one of the problems that we see as we went out and toured a variety of businesses is we saw that the engineers were actually coming out and working on the floor with the fabricators. The wall of cabinets that you see in the picture to your right, it joins the architecture and engineering classroom. What we are proposing is to eliminate that wall that is solid, turn it into a glass wall along with doors, so we can have a clean room for our engineering and AutoCAD spaces, but then also have the ability for the architects to move right out onto the floor. We're also looking to take another wall out, which would open up the power tech and the metal shop into one large classroom where students would be able to move back and forth between the two on a variety of projects. So the prototypes that you see and drawings that our architects have come up with shows a much more open space in that particular area. We had a local company, Crescent Industries, actually came out and took a look and walked through our design with us and made some additional recommendations. One of the things you will see in the top picture are the way the lathes are laid out. In the new design, they're actually safer because if anything were to kick off of them, they would actually go into a wall rather than up into the air. So that was an area that we laid out. And then below, you can see again tables that are on and workspaces that are on wheels, which is very similar to a lot of the manufacturing groups that we were in. The employee moves from space to space, but takes their tools with them and their workspace with them. So we're looking to create that particular style so that students are familiar with what they're going to experience in the workplace and demonstrate that. So this is what our design will look like for the applied arts area. This is our current, as it sits, architecture and engineering room, and then we have a prototyping room. Currently, there's no door. That was that wall of cabinets. So what we've done with the architect is we've opened this by having a door so the fabricators can come into the prototyping room and vice versa. The architects can go out of the prototyping room and directly onto the floor. You're also seeing layout of the wall missing. So where my cursor is running right now is an existing wall. We are proposing to take down that wall, open up that space, and you can see that we've laid out based on some input from local companies. We have a dedicated welding area. We have a dedicated welding or metal fabrication area, our lathes that are laid out, CNC machines, and then workspaces that are mobile that can be moved from space to space. One of the other things that we are adding is an outdoor enclosed with a cage as well as a roof space where students can store some of their projects. If you look to the picture on the top right, you'll see our engineering students in their trebuchets. They compete yearly in a local York County pumpkin chunking contest. The trebuchets that they build based on the parameters of the competition are too large to actually put into our rooms currently. So the two large garage doors that you see to the front are actually belong to our buildings and grounds department. They have been nice enough the last 4 or 5 years to actually clear out space and allow trebuchets to be moved in and moved out to be worked on. Problem is moving them in, moving them out takes time, which then takes time away from the students being able to apply their learning. So what we're looking for in the proposal is this larger space, which has higher roof lining than what the classrooms have, to be able to work there safely, as well as then store, and then we're not a burden on our buildings and grounds department. It'll also add extra storage space. You see the picture to the lower left. While our building is kept immaculate by Mr. Buffington's crews, storage space is an issue. So you can see outside of our wood shop, we have to store wood sometimes in our hallways, which is a safety issue. And we would look to store some of those things outside. Those things that we could store outside, we put outside, which would then open up additional space within the building for storage. Again, we're trying to model, prepare kids for their careers, as well as look towards the future for our students and give them the greatest opportunity to learn so that they're prepared to go out into a 2-year, 4-year, or workforce. Another area we're looking to enhance is our fine arts program. What you see are pictures of what we're kind of starting to look towards. The lower left-hand corner is our graphics arts classroom, and I'll show you a picture of what ours currently looks like. We certainly would like to modernize it and open it up so students can move around and collaborate a little more easily than what we currently have. The top right is a picture of a college-style art studio. While we're not quite going there, the open space, the ability for students to have a larger working space, be able to put things up and keep them up, as well as outdoor lighting, is something that we are looking to enhance in our current design. And then the lower right is a kiln. That is one thing that we do not have currently at the high school. That was not designed. We did not have the space designed for it. Our art teacher currently takes any type of ceramics over to Southern L, who's nice enough to allow us to use our kiln, but it certainly would help our teacher as well as enhance our curriculum if we could do ceramics on a more regular basis with our students in an effort to prep and prepare them for their future endeavors if they choose to go to an art school or in type graphics design. The other piece that with this in our current building, we have one art classroom on the first floor, and one in our graphics arts classroom is actually downstairs on our lower floor. One of the things that I said that our students really wanted was that being able to collaborate. So working with our architects and with some of our art students, they came up with this design off of the common space. We have a graphics arts classroom that actually has a sliding door where students could, when the teachers open it up, be able to go right into the art room, and vice versa. The art students could go into the graphics design classroom and work collaboratively on a topic of their activity. We're also maintaining our dark room in speaking to our art teachers, as well as several local colleges. Having and maintaining a dark room actually does give our students who want to go into art school or graphics design a little bit of an advantage to those schools that have dropped it. It's just a skill set that they develop, and our teachers and even our students felt that it was important to maintain that. So we were able to maintain our dark room. We were able to add a kiln, and we were able to add a little bit larger storage space for our art supplies, a little larger than what we currently have. So this would give our ability to have that collaboration, grab a little bit of space, maintain or enhance our current curriculum. It also gives our students who are in the art room or the graphics design, if it's a larger project, they actually can move right out onto the common space where they can work and display their work for our students throughout the building. So that's important. One of the things that we definitely wanted to make sure that we had our students be able to do. We also added and look to enhance um, small group spaces. And one of the things that we did in the design, and it's something that students definitely wanted, is they wanted practice spaces for music rooms. They also would like to see some small group labs and open spaces for them to be able to work. The pictures that you see are really just pictures we grabbed off the internet, but kind of gives you the idea of what it would be available. The top right, you can see 2 practice rooms for music. Below, you can see a music almost studio setup, and then a student workspace that we're looking for. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Poole, who's going to talk to you a little bit about what our music practice rooms will be able to do to enhance our music program, which you can see we added 4 to our current music wing that are listed with the blue dots. So Mr. Poole, would you like to take it from here for a moment?
Sure. Thank you. And good evening. Happy to share a few thoughts regarding the needs for additional music practice rooms and a small music classroom. The music department is always looking forward to having an additional rehearsal room for a number of uses. We've been hoping for a while to add additional course offerings. However, the space to offer those classes has been a bit of a factor in not moving forward with plans as of yet. So as a department, we've talked about the addition of courses such as music technology or a guitar class, which would be really appealing to students and necessary as we move forward. And courses such as these would need a dedicated space where students could have access to things such as a digital audio workstation and other audio related equipment. And in addition to these offerings, we have often had breakout rooms within our large ensembles. And often we find ourselves, as Dr. Mullen already mentioned, down a hallway or outdoors. So we really would benefit from having a dedicated music room and additional music space. And practice rooms have been a desire for a while now from the students. Always have students who want to work on their own, and often they find themselves in a large room, which is not always conducive to producing, the kind of skills that they need to do in creativity. And sometimes the kids just need to have a bit of space, for themselves. So, those things would really be beneficial to us. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poole. So what you can see with our design here is we have a large, what we're calling a band practice room, but obviously it could be used for orchestra or any one of the ensembles that we have. 2 medium-sized workspaces for students to be able to work, and then as well as a small, an even smaller, which would really be an instructor and maybe 2 students. Each of those has their own door. They have glass that looks into the classrooms for safety so that we can maintain supervision. This is our new music wing as our current proposed plan. The classrooms that are being used for music right now, the choir room would be eliminated over time and demolished and turned into part of our parking lot. And the orchestra and band room would become our main power plant. So our boiler and all of our HVAC materials would be there. What you're seeing is a choir room that we had input from our choir teacher. It's actually a flat floor, even though it looks very much like we have set up now with tiers, but it is slightly larger than what we have right now. We have an orchestra room that is just slightly larger and adds additional storage space. That's one thing with the choir room. We did add additional space. Our choir booster club, along with the school board, couple years ago got new robes. They take up space along with all the music that our wonderful music that our choir sings. So we have space there. We added a collaborative space for all 3 teachers to share a workspace and office space so that they can collaborate on pieces. We have our music room, which could fit, is larger than we currently have. So the band could actually, in poor weather, bring a larger group together to play. And have the space to be able to move around a little bit. We added storage space for the marching band, as well as we enlarged the current space that we have for their uniforms and for their equipment as well. And then a safer place for them to have their tractor as well as some of their other supplies for their field show. And we made sure that we included space for our theater to be able to move equipment in and out of the theater, as well as an additional workspace for them. So we did take care of our music and our theater arts groups, which are a huge part of who we are as Susquehannock High School. When it comes to working in the classrooms, the pictures that you can see, certainly one of the things that we have continued to implement and continue to push is the ability for our students to work together. Obviously, these are all pre-COVID, but the idea for students to work in collaboration. The world is flat, and collaboration is the name of the game, whether it's we're doing it by video or whether we're working together right next to one another. And you can see, again, these are 3 different classrooms that we just chose randomly. We did not stage these photos. When we walked in, you could see students working collaboratively with one another on a variety of projects. And that is huge for us. Some of our rooms in our building are not necessarily conducive to those types of learning activities. This is one of our particular rooms. It's one of our smaller. We have 10 classrooms that are under 800 square feet, which makes working collaboratively sometimes very difficult. And you can see this particular classroom. This is a class of about 25 students. They are packed in pretty tight in order to all get in there. And the teacher was very creative. If you see the picture on the right, she actually went out and got some folding chairs. And when she wants to have students work collaboratively or to at least gain some space, students will actually currently go out into the hallway and will work collaboratively in the hallway. And while creative, and kudos to the teacher for wanting to ensure that we have students have every opportunity to work collaboratively, it does create a little bit of a safety issue with students in the hallway. So the idea of trying to create classrooms that are all relatively standard sized is definitely something that we feel is important, and we worked very hard with Scott Schonk and our architectural team to enhance that. All the classrooms will be designed, typical classrooms, English, math, social studies, driver's ed, our health classrooms will all be about the same size as those that are currently in our tower, which is one of our newer additions. So they'll all be a standard size, which will help us with scheduling in the future when we have larger classrooms, and allow us to be able to fit students in comfortably and give them the opportunity to have those dynamic learning environments rather than being packed in. The days of standing in front and delivering, much like I'm doing to you this evening, have since gone by the wayside. What you can see here, the picture to the left, and I can speak to this one because I taught in this particular classroom. It's the smallest of all of our classrooms. It's about 739 square feet. I had 28 students in that classroom. You can see it's not a great picture that I took, but definitely students are jammed in pretty tight prior to COVID. And you can also see natural lighting. That was one of the things that kept coming up time and time again with our students. That is the natural lighting into that particular classroom. That was right around lunchtime, so that would have been peak of the day for light into that classroom. Everything else would have had to been done artificially through our lights. So the design that you're seeing that our architectural team put together with the input of our students and our teachers, you can see a picture. Certainly our students will not be sitting in rows like that. However, you can see classrooms will have much larger windows, which will definitely bring in additional lighting. They'll all have a projector in the classrooms. They will have enough space to be able to move around. There will be 2 large whiteboards on both sides. So students definitely will have a much nicer learning environment or an improved learning environment in the proposed building that they have. And all of our buildings or classrooms will be designed to comfortably be able to fit 30 or more students, well, 30 students for sure, but if we had to, we could certainly squeeze a few more in based on size. Picture to the left is an actual picture of one of our science classrooms. Our science classrooms really are nice, but they are not necessarily practical or conducive to flexibility. So this particular classroom is a chemistry classroom. If you are a graduate, you may be familiar with this particular classroom, but this is the picture from the back of the room. So that particular back lab station that I was sitting at and took that photo, if the teacher was actually trying to gain the attention from the front of the room, they would not be able to see the teacher in a particular lab. Again, has a hood and a vent, which is nice. Not all of our science classrooms do, it was a problem. And what we're looking for is to create something that's a little more flexible and dynamic. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bropes, who is the department chair for our science department, and he can chat a little bit about what he and his department came up with designs.
Hi, everyone. Like Dr. Mullen said, I'm Greg Bropes. I'm the secondary science department facilitator, and I'm also a chemistry and physics teacher in the high school. So, as Dr. Mullen has been talking about for the last 15 or 20 minutes or so, our classrooms were designed for different eras. Our classrooms were designed for a teacher standing in the front and me delivering content. And we're really working hard in the science department to kind of build the content and the science process skills in our students so that they can go out there and solve 21st century problems that we all are now being exposed to. And the classrooms that we tried to put together really give us a lot of flexibility in allowing students to collaborate and work together, while also giving us a lot of safety. So a teacher can kind of stand in the middle of the room and supervise all of the students working in their labs, rather than this is Mrs. Bonnet's room. I don't know if we were allowed to mention names. And Mrs. Bonnet's and I have been teaching together for 14 years, and she's limited in how she can actually view her students working by this giant fume hood in the middle of the room. I'll be honest, I'm absolutely blessed in my classroom. I have 12 fume hoods, so I'm able to do a lot more lab activities than some of my peers, because I have the access to the safe space for my students to work. And we're looking to be considerably more equitable in that, so that all of the chemistry classrooms will have access to the same resources. And then also allow us to implement some additional electives perhaps, because now we'll have additional space for students to work on these labs.
Thank you, Mr. Burbs. Appreciate it. Pictures that you see on the right are prototypes for our various labs. You can see the way that they're set up. All the materials or all the hard surfaces for the sinks, fume hoods, and vents are along the wall with the open space for exactly what Mr. Burbs said, which is for viewing for the teacher as well as the students to look around. Some of the other areas that we certainly worked on as time has gone on, we continue to partner with more and more outside groups in order to provide more and more services for our students, which we feel and believe is something that we must do in the best interest of our students. As we have done that, we've begun to notice that our building was not necessarily designed for that. So what you're seeing here is an outlay of the current proposed counseling suite. We have 4 counselors. We are very blessed, as Mr. Brope said, to have 4 counselors, and we appreciate that, and they work very hard for our students. But one of the things that our outside services are asking for, counseling services or social workers that come into work, they are looking for private spaces. And currently we have very few of those. So what we've done is we've actually designed 8 office spaces in our counseling office, 4 for counselors and 4 where we will be able to offer spaces for not only teachers or counselors to work one-on-one with students or administrators if as needed, but also for outside groups to be able to come in. They'll be able to safely meet there. There'll be a window on the door where, certainly supervision is ensured, but they'll be able to go into a private space, be able to work with the student and meet students' needs, which is important. Well, actually, to be able to bring in Miss Platts, who is an absolute saint and works very hard for our students to actually into our counseling suite, so we can make her part of a greater part of our building, although she works within the entire district. Her main office is here at the high school. Actually put a documents room that, as we continue to have more and more testing, that is something that continues to come up in audit after audit, as we need a documents room for that testing material. A dedicated space for our SRO to be headquartered at least at the high school, as well as all of our offices for athletic director and administration. And one of the safety features we've put in is an actual, what I call unofficially a rat trap, where it's dedicated that visitors have to come in and they cannot get anywhere else in the building other than into the main office after they're checked out through our Raptor system. So that is definitely one piece. We've also worked with our nurse. She's designed the nursing suite to be even more ADA compliant than it currently is, which is important. And we certainly want to make sure that we can serve all students in our building. One of the other areas that we have looked to enhance to be more inclusive is to look at our bathrooms and our shower rooms. Those of us, and we've all been through high school, one of probably the most intimidating places to be is in the locker room. So what we've done is we looked to be ADA compliant, but we also looked to be inclusive, and we've gone the route of colleges, and we've created single rather than gang showers. They are single changing spaces and single showers where students can be able to go in, feel like they're part of the building, go in and change, and then go out to PE without any issue, which we think is definitely going to be an enhancement for that. And we also added additional storage space for PE. But we certainly feel this inclusiveness is a huge piece, and it takes away a huge stigma of PE for high school students, which is definitely, we've all been through that. Rather than go to a separate bathroom to change, they actually will have private space, which we feel is extremely important. And down the road will continue to be an important issue. We also look to improve the safety. We added an exterior tower to our building design, which is important. Currently, we are running with the auspices of Run, Hide, Fight for one of our safety features. Teachers and students on the second floor cannot necessarily initiate the run piece in all aspects because many of our stairwells go right into an interior space rather than directly exiting the outside. So that is definitely a large improvement for us. So that is important. And we have moved actually the elevator to, rather than going into a storage space, it'll actually hit all 3 floors, be more centrally located for those students who are in wheelchairs or on crutches, which is definitely important. And then one of the other things that we look to with our design, and our architects again have been fantastic, is we've looked to figure out and found a way to honor our history while looking to the future. So if you take a look at the top picture, that is the proposed design for the new high school. And if you take a look at it, it is pretty close to what it looks like now. We're going to maintain the Susquehannock High School wording, much like we have now on the outside of our cafeteria. We're going to look to restore the flags, which were on the main post and have since been taken down. We're definitely adding more windows, which will look a little bit more industrial to honor the industries, the canning industries and the various other industries that were in our area. And if you take a look at the lower picture, you will notice that our covered spaces for students to get the bus or to be dropped off look a lot like a train station area. So we went with kind of an Art Deco type of design to honor the railroads that connected the 3 larger communities within our district. So in an effort to make a connection from our history all the way to the future. So that is what our design is going to look like and what we tried to do with it. Mrs. Green?
Thank you, Dr. Mullen, and I really appreciate your overview. And thank you to the whole team. As Dr. Bryson had said earlier, we have been working on this for quite a while. In the summer of 2019, we put a request for proposal out for the feasibility study. And we selected, after reviewing all the proposals, we selected Beers and Hoffman, who put together that district-wide facility study for us. So we have are really impressed with the work of Beers and Hoffman. It is the first time that the district has worked with them. And again, we're really impressed with what they've provided for us. For the high school design options, as you heard earlier, they rose to the top of the biggest needs. As far as the design options, we had 3 different main options, and then we actually chose a combination option. So we had option A, which would be just full renovations. Option B, which is a partial rebuild of about 72%. option C of a brand new facility. And then we took the combination of A and B, the 40% rebuild that Dr. Mullen had talked about. And some of the reasons that we decided to go this direction is because many of those spaces that you talked about that are too small, it would be very difficult to enlarge those spaces. So we would not end up with a very good finished product. So some of the things like the hoods being in the middle of the classrooms and pillars and those things, it was very difficult and impossible to fix some of those issues. The other thing that was important is with having this 40% rebuild, while we like to, and we always, whenever possible, operate like a business, and we're as fiscally as responsible as we can, we're not a business. We do need to stay open during this 30-month project. So where we are going to put our students and how we phase the building is critical. With the 40% rebuild, not only will we get spaces that are optimal for our students, we also will be able to build that 40%, house the students in there while we're renovating the rest of the building, which will allow us not to have trailers, portable trailers, and not to have near the phasing that we would have if we didn't have that 40% rebuild. So in the end, it will actually save money not having those expenses, what I consider expenses that are going to go away. I mean, we'd rather put the money into having the proper design for 50 to 70 years to come versus putting the money into things like portable trailers and phasing that will not be for the benefits of students. So that's one of the reasons we went with that design. Thank you, Dr. Mullen. So then the other thing, as we're looking at this, the Susquehannock High School project and administration building together is about a $64 to $65 million project. And the reason I have a range there is we believe it's about 64 million, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the Act 34 hearing that we're required to have, which has it listed at 65 million. We have to put the maximum project cost in for the Act 34 hearing. So that's why I wanted to clarify that. So we believe it's somewhere between 64 and 65 million. But as we're looking at this project, we are looking at the whole district. So we have a long-term plan in place for the entire district, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. Also, we'll talk about campus-wide site improvements that we'll be doing as part of this project. And then the renovation of Shrewsbury Southern Elementary and Southern Middle School as part of the district-wide program. Finally, on this slide, we have other capital needs. When we went through the facility study, one of the things that we were able to do is look at what are considered greatest needs outside of the major building projects. Generally, you want to include as much as you can in the project because of reimbursement from the state. The bad news is there's no reimbursement from the state right now, but the good news is we're able to split out those greatest needs projects and do them ahead of time. So over the last 2 summers, we have pulled out those projects and we're able to get those out of the way before we started the major building renovations. And some of those projects included new windows for Southern Middle School and Southern Elementary School, chillers for 3 of our buildings, the middle school, the Southern Elementary School, and Shrewsbury. Again, some needs that we could get out of the way that won't need to be replaced when we start the building project for that particular school, but we'll keep those schools in good operating order until it's their turn as we go through the renovation cycle. So I wanted to point that out. The other thing is we own part of our sewer line, so that's one of those projects that we're working on. So again, we were able to split these out and do them separately at this time. Go ahead, Dr. Mullen. So as we're working through this again, we want to make sure that everyone understands this is a very conservative budget approach. So when we say 64 to 65 million, these are very conservative estimates. We never want to come in ahead of time. They do include escalation costs. We thought that we originally, we were going to make this presentation last year in March, and then, things happened. So we had to delay for an entire year. So there are escalation costs. Again, because of the environment, we're not exactly sure whether we're going to see a 3% increase by delaying the year. But again, we want to be conservative when we're looking at our numbers. As I talked about, we do not believe there'll be state reimbursement. We're still keeping our fingers crossed, and we're still following what's called the Plan Com process, so that if there would be money available, we will apply and we will go down that path and make sure that we are able to get that state reimbursement if it's there. We also at this point have quite a bit of design contingency in between 2.5% and 3%. Once we get to the next estimate, the construction estimate in May, we'll lower that down to about 1%. But again, very conservative numbers at this point in time. And then we have a contingency also at this time. Go ahead, Dr. Mullen. Again, I talked about long-term planning. So these are our planned projects, and we've looked out for the next 10 years at the total millage that's needed for all of the projects, and we're phasing that in. So for instance, the millage needed for the high school project is about 0.37 mils. Oh, that was a tongue twister, 0.37 mils. We have already rolled in 0.3 of that. So almost all of the millage for the high school. We rolled in 1/10 of a mil in 2018-19, 2/10 of a mil in 19-20. And we were planning on rolling some in, but again, with COVID, we've not rolled any for this year's budget, but we'll be able to complete that in next year's budget. And we will continue to roll in millage slowly and carefully for all the other building projects, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to have a huge increase at any given time for these projects. We want to do it planned, slow, roll in to get the projects renovated or get the buildings renovated and get these projects done. We greatly appreciate our community support of our schools, and we know that it is critical that we keep our tax rate at a point where our community can afford it as best as possible. So that is critical to us as we make our plans and we walk through things. Go ahead, Dr. Mullen. And then finally, again, we really understand the commitment and the sacrifice our community makes in funding our schools. As you can see from the chart, we are the lowest in the York County area for taxes, and we continue to take that very seriously. Even though we've rolled in some of this millage already, we still continue to be very low. And it is very important for us to continue down that path and to do it slow and purposefully as we're doing these projects. And last screen there. There we go. And finally, our timeline. So we will be having the Act 34 hearing. It is a required hearing when you have significant renovations and additions to a building. That will be on March 16th at 6 p.m. It is a public hearing, and there are 4 main things that are necessary for the hearing. We talk about the purpose of the project, similar to what you heard this evening, the options considered. We describe the new additions and renovations. And then we also would present the maximum building construction cost. So that's really the new construction piece. So that's about 22.9 million. And then the maximum project cost, which includes that, and that will be about $65 million. We do have additional information on our website, the Act 34 booklet, the resolution that was passed, and more information about the project if you'd like to take a look at that. And then coming this summer, we are doing some campus preparation projects that we are pulling part of this, part of the high school out to do ahead of time to prepare for the project. So it is part of the cost that I already talked about, but we're pulling it out separately to get things ready, to get our staging area and to do some things that'll help move the project along more quickly. So we're relocating utilities this summer, and we're working on some of the parking areas again, so that we have staging areas and we get some of those things out of the way prior to bidding the project next fall, with construction beginning spring 2022 and lasting approximately 30 months. And then that's all I have for this evening.